Good morning, members of the committee, members of parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to this meeting of the Committee of Country Expenditures, what we usually refer to as CLU, number 3 for today, Wednesday, February 12, 2025. I would like to welcome the Honorable Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, and her support staff. We have established a quorum of 4 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from MP Kotai and notice of lateness from MP Irian. Before I proceed, are there any other notifications from any members of Parliament? I see MP La Cruz. Go ahead. You have the floor.
A blessed morning, Madam Chair Lady, SG, the Minister of Finance and her support staff, those in the Tribune, my fellow colleagues, and those watching on social media. Madam Chair Lady, seeing that this is a meeting that has to do with the expenditures of government, and seeing the letter that we received yesterday, I am extremely worried because what I'm reading, what I'm hearing, what I saw is 3 different things. Madam Chair Lady, through you to the Minister of Finance, I'd like her to be honest, be clear with everything that has to do with the budget, all the mistakes that were made. Please, please, please come clear. Parliament is here to support, and if there's any mistakes, we want to know exactly what is wrong and where and how we can fix them. Madam Chair Lady, it is not time to play any type of games. In the beginning of the meeting, the budget meeting, I made it clear. I said I am not going to focus on the numbers. I'm going to focus on policies during my questions because the numbers made no sense and we continue to get new numbers every time and new changes while in the meeting because it was being rushed. So, Madam Chair Lady, through you to the Minister of Finance and the government in extension, please, please make sure we know exactly what is going on. Because right now, with this letter, I feel like I'm being lied to. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I see that I have another notification from MP Duran. MP Duran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to give a notice of lateness for my colleague, MP York, who is on his way. And Madam Chair, I would also like to dovetail on the point brought forward by my colleague, MP La Cruz. We sat here in December. It was brought up. My words when I began to speak on the budget was hartstikke spoed is zelden goed. And the reason why I brought that up, Madam Chair, is because there were many concerns brought forward by different members within the Parliament, whereas numbers weren't clear, things didn't make sense. Yesterday, we received a very vague letter in terms of referencing discrepancies and technical difficulties, but not saying what they were. And up to now, almost a month later, the budget has not been published since its approval. Madam Chair, I hope that through you to the Minister, some clarity can come and some honesty can come in how we're going to move forward with this so that we can continue with the people's business. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Duran, for your notification. Just as a brief sort of comment on my behalf, just as a reminder as to the topic that we're here for to discuss today, and I will give the Minister of Finance the opportunity, if she so decides, to make a comment on this when she begins her presentation. But I do want us to bear in mind that the topic at hand today is our CLU to go over the tax assessment. And while this is a valid comment. I do not want to disregard what has been said previously. I just want to make it known that I will give that liberty to the minister to comment on it if she so decides. Otherwise, we understand which other means are available to us to let exactly this be known to all persons here today. Thank you very much to both MPs. I see MP Arian has a notification. MP, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Yes, following up on the statements made by MP Duran, the reason why we think it's very important is we sent an email, I believe, last week to the chair, a letter, and a follow-up letter to the chair on Monday gone. We have since then received a letter from the Prime Minister that is very, very, very vague, without any, let's say, correspondence from the Minister of Finance regarding the budget. The Prime Minister sent a letter that said absolutely nothing. It had no solutions. He only stated issues and problems, but did not state what he expects from Parliament and our role. And MP Duran was on radio this morning, and he already indicated, based on Article 100, that anything to do with the budget, right, has to come back to Parliament. It's not the authority of government to make any changes or amendments to the budget. The budget has not been ratified, which means that the government, so even this, the government cannot execute any tasks based on the stuff that they mentioned and the promises they made in the budget debate 2025. They are operating off of a budget 2024, which we created, as even the coalition members continuously mentioned that, hey, it's your budget. Yes, we created a budget in 2023 for 2024. So the government is operating on a vision of 2023, which means subsidies, COLA, vacation pay, among others, police officers, all of these are going to be affected until the budget has been ratified. I see the meeting schedule has been posted for the next week, and we have no indication of a CC or OVE or the next steps on this matter, which is the biggest legislation and the most important legislation for us as a body of Parliament. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Arian, and I refer to my previous comments beforehand in terms of providing the liberty to the Minister of Finance to decide if she would like to comment on that today or via our regular channels. Thank you to all the MPs for your notifications. The agenda point for this committee meeting is discussion with the Minister of Finance on the report from the General Audit Chamber, audit into the process of ex officio tax assessments. IS number 728-2022-2023, also IS 1077/2022-2023, dated September 6, 2023. This meeting was requested by MP Sarah Westcott Williams. We go over to the agenda point. Parliament received the report audit into the process of ex officio tax assessments on April 26, 2023. As previously mentioned, the document is registered at IS/728/2023-2024. Subsequently, on September 6, 2023, Parliament received a letter from MP Westcott Williams with the request that a meeting of the Committee of Country Expenditures be convened to discuss the report from the General Audit Chamber. The presence of the Minister of Finance was also requested. This document is registered as IS/1077/2022-2023, dated September 6, 2023. Have different dates. Additionally, it is important to note that Parliament received a copy of a letter addressed to the Minister of Finance regarding recent concerns shared regarding material inaccuracies in profit tax assessments issued by the Tax Administration on October 29, 2024. This document is registered under IS/213/2024-2025. Parliament also received a focus audit titled Experiences with the Tax System from the General Audit Chamber on January 13, 2025. This document is registered under IS/458/2024-2025. These documents are mentioned in this context because they are related to the topic of the initial report of the Audit Chamber. At this time, I first give the floor to the requester of this meeting to elucidate her request. MP Westcott Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and a good morning to you, a good morning to our support staff, good morning to my colleagues, and a word of good morning and welcome to the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Marinka J. Gums, and her support staff here this morning. A good morning to all tuned in to this meeting. Madam Chair Lady, thank you for the opportunity, and I can be very brief. As you indicated in your introduction, this report goes back to 2023. And in that report, it is mentioned, amongst other things, with respect to the follow-up on the report, that the report was prepared with the cooperation from several civil servants employed in the area of the report, namely taxes. Some recommendations were made in the report. The report states that the opportunity was given to the Minister of Finance to react to the report. However, that has not happened. So fast forward a bit, and we have the report, we have the recommendations, but in the meantime, we also have a project under the auspices of the TWO regarding tax reform, and the like. So I think it's important now to hear from the minister, and that is my request as the requester for this meeting and this topic, just not only where things are with respect to the recommendations made in this particular report, but also overall where tax reform, be it the system or the administration of the tax inspectorate, where these matters are concerned. And if the minister, who in several meetings here in Parliament have highlighted some of her priority areas for tax reform, and during, I believe it was the budget meeting, I asked if the minister could provide somewhat of a timeline for these different items of tax reform, especially what can be considered low-hanging fruit in the area of tax reform. We have spoken over and over again with respect to the profit tax, etc., the shift from direct to indirect taxations. I don't think there's a disagreement where these particular elements of tax reform are concerned. So for me, Madam Chair Lady, given from when this report dates, one, the fact that the General Audit Chamber continues to assess the issue of tax administration. You mentioned the focus audit that has taken place, getting experiences from taxpayers in terms of their experiences as encountered with the tax inspectorate. But for me, what is extremely important, if we can get an update with some dates for the tax reform elements that have been highlighted by the Minister of Finance as having her utmost attention and priority. So two things, Madam Chair Lady, from my perspective. If the Minister can briefly go over the recommendations, or most of them in this particular report, but more than that for me is how are we progressing with tax reform and with some of the priorities that the Minister has elaborated on in previous meetings of Parliament. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair Lady, and I await the Minister's presentation and responses. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. I now give the floor to the Minister of Finance, Minister Marinka Gums, for her opening remarks and presentation. Minister, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable members of Parliament, griffier, support staff, persons in the Tribune, those tuned in via radio and social media platforms, people of St. Martin, good morning and blessed day. I am here today to discuss the audit report of the General Audit Chamber issued in April 2023 concerning the process of ex officio tax assessments. However, prior to going into my presentation, I would like to acknowledge the concerns of MP Duran, MP Lacruz, and MP Irian. It is well noted that you received, the members of parliament received a letter yesterday outlining a specific concern as it relates to budget 2025. And what I will state on this matter at this moment is you will be receiving a subsequent letter directly from me as Minister of Finance outlining exactly what has transpired with the 2025 budget. I have been nothing but truthful the entire time, so MP La Cruz, know that that will continue even in this letter upcoming to Parliament. I will now begin with a brief presentation, starting with an introduction to explain what ex officio tax assessments are, their purpose, and the reasons they are issued. Following that, I will outline the intent of the audit as described in the General Audit Chamber's report and provide an overview of the tax obligations for both individuals and businesses. Next, I will present a brief explanation of the current process for handling individual and business ex officio tax assessments, offering insight into how these assessments are issued and processed. I will then summarize the main findings of the General Audit Chamber, followed by a response to each finding, clarifying the ministry's stance and the steps that will be taken in response. Lastly, I will discuss the measures that will be implemented to improve the ex officio assessment process. These measures will be based on both the report's recommendations and ongoing efforts within the tax administration, ensuring that we move forward and keep our minds fixed on what the future of finance would entail. At the end of the day, the goal remains the same: to improve the tax administration's process. I would like to thank the General Audit Chamber for this report, as reports like these are crucial in helping us review, analyze, and follow up on key areas that require improvement. We all share the common goal of strengthening and enhancing these processes. So, what is an ex officio tax assessment? An ex officio tax assessment, or Amshalve aanslag in Dutch, is an estimated tax assessment issued by the tax administration to businesses or individuals who fail to file their tax returns. Again, who fail to file their tax returns. It is important to note that if you have filed your tax return as a business or individual, you will not receive an ex officio tax assessment. The only instance in which ex officio assessments are issued is when no tax return has been filed by the individual or the business. Aim of the investigation of ex officio tax assessments by the General Audit Chamber. The General Audit Chamber's investigation aimed to verify whether ex officio tax assessments are reasonable, meaning that the estimates made should reflect realistic projections of an individual's or business's income, turnover, profit, or other relevant financial factors. In addition to the reasonableness of the estimates, their aim with this audit is also to verify the effectiveness of adopting an ex officio tax assessment. Under normal circumstances, the burden of proof in tax matters rests with the tax authority. However, in cases of ex officio tax assessments, this burden shifts to the taxpayer, who must now prove whether the ex officio tax assessment is inaccurate. The goal of the tax administration is to issue ex officio tax assessments. I apologize, is not to issue ex officio tax assessments. On the contrary, every individual and business is strongly encouraged to file their tax returns on time. Receiving an ex officio tax assessment means not only an estimated tax liability, but also the imposition of surcharges and fines, resulting in a more complex and time-consuming process. The process of issuing individual and business ex officio assessments. Before presenting the findings, I would like to provide a brief explanation of the current process relating to ex officio tax assessments, which are issued for both individuals and businesses. The responsibility for issuing all assessments, including both regular and ex officio assessment, lies with the tax assessor or assessors. I now move on to individual ex officio tax assessments. For individuals, the ex officio tax assessments are manually calculated by tax assessors. More complex cases are assigned to experienced assessors. The tax assessors rely on a combination of long-standing unwritten guidelines and established tax laws. This requires assessors to make reasonable estimations based on available information. Once the estimated taxable amount is determined, a 10% surcharge is applied along with an additional fine. As for business ex officio assessments, in contrast, the ex officio assessments for businesses are automatically generated by the system without the direct involvement of the tax assessors. The calculation is based on the estimated income previously reported by the business owner at the time of registration of the business at the tax office. This estimated amount is then subject to 25% surcharge and a fine. Proceeding with the findings. I will now present the findings as outlined in the General Audit Chamber's report. First, I will examine the findings related to ex officio tax assessments for individuals, followed by those concerning business taxpayers. Each finding will be briefly summarized, followed by a response outlining the ministry's position and my perspective on the matter, including the steps that will be taken to address the issue. Findings on individual taxpayers. 1, lack of a written policy for ex officio assessments. Currently, there is no established written policy governing the ex officio assessment process. The absence of a clear policy presents risks such as lack of standardization, reduced transparency, difficulties in training new employees, and inconsistencies in assessments. While it is acknowledged that tax assessors are trained, qualified, and experienced, and they must exercise professional discretion, I do agree with the General Audit Chamber that having written policies in place is essential. A well-documented policy will serve as a guideline for tax assessors, ensuring continuity in the assessment process, particularly in cases where staff transitions occur. This will help new employees seamlessly take over responsibilities while maintaining a consistent and standardized approach to estimating ex officio assessments. Additionally, such a policy can serve as an internal control mechanism, providing a structured framework that can be tested to verify the accuracy, reliability, and fairness of the ex officio tax assessment process. Implementing these measures will contribute to greater transparency, accountability, and efficiency within the tax administration. As such, this recommendation will be implemented and a formal written policy will be developed to govern ex officio tax assessments. Number 2, risk of arbitrary action. The General Audit Chamber noted that ex officio tax assessments are not reviewed by another employee and that surcharges are not systematically verified. The tax office has confirmed this finding. Ex officio tax assessments are sent on behalf of the head inspector and while additional checks and controls may improve the process, they are not currently feasible due to limited staffing. However, a possible solution being explored is the automation of ex officio tax assessments calculations for individuals, as is done for businesses. If successfully implemented, tax assessors will review system-generated assessments rather than manually estimating them, which may help reduce their workload and provide a more reasonable tax assessment in a more timely manner. While conducting individual checks on every single assessment is impractical, given current constraints, random sampling and verification can be introduced as a quality control measure. It is important to stress that the best way to avoid ex officio tax assessments is for individuals and businesses to file their tax returns on time. The ministry will continue efforts to increase awareness about tax obligations and provide guidance on how to file properly. Number 3, lack of tax inspectors. Currently, there is only one tax inspector employed within the tax administration. However, the department responsible for tax assessments, which includes ex officio tax assessments, has 7 tax assessors, 3 junior assessors, and 4 senior assessors. Filling critical vacancies remains a major challenge throughout government's apparatus, mainly due to outdated salary scales and an outdated function book that does not offer competitive salaries. This matter is being addressed as part of the Lance Paquette project. Number 4, lack of internal records and accountability measures. The audit chamber highlighted that there are no systematic internal records to track how often ex officio assessments are reviewed or to compare them with subsequent tax filings. This issue stems from limitations within the current tax system. Unfortunately, the system does not differentiate between ex officio assessments and regular tax assessments, making it impossible to extract specific data on ex officio tax assessments. This issue can only be resolved with the implementation of a new tax system, which is being procured under Theme C of the Lance Paquette. Number 5, effectiveness of surcharges and their impact on compliance. A surcharge is added to ex officio tax assessments, 10% for individuals and 25% for businesses, to ensure that estimated assessments are not too low and to encourage taxpayers to file. Approximately 38,000 tax assessments were sent out last year. However, due to system limitations, we do not know how many were ex officio assessments and how much were regular assessments, as the system does not differentiate. For individuals, ex officio tax assessments were sent for 2019, while for businesses, they were sent for the year 2020. Unfortunately, due to limitations in the existing tax system, we do not have concrete data on the effectiveness of these surcharges in prompting taxpayers to file or pay their taxes. A new tax system would allow us to track compliance rates more accurately. Number 6, delivery of ex officio tax assessments via postal system. The General Audit Chamber noted that the tax administration does not verify whether taxpayers actually receive their assessments. Mail delivery on St. Martin has proven to be challenging, mainly due to lack of proper street names, a need for updated correct addresses, and the lack of mailboxes at residence and business gates continue to be a challenge for effective mail delivery, which has led to there being a lack of respect for mail on St. Martin. These well-documented issues by the current postal system can reduce tax compliance and increase administrative costs. Solutions being explored include e-government project. This aims to integrate address updates between government entities, the census, TIAT, VROMI, and the tax office, as well as non-governmental organizations such as the Chamber of Commerce. Digital notifications, a future tax system could allow for email notifications, but this would require legislative amendments given the option of receiving these tax assessments by mail and or digitally. For now, the legal obligation remains on the taxpayer to file their taxes, and the tax administration's role is to ensure that assessments are properly issued and documented. Number 7, denial of sampling. Regarding this matter, the General Audit Chamber has stated that they were denied access to certain records due to concerns over sensitivity and privacy. While the Audit Chamber asserts its legislative authority, the tax office has justified its denial based on confidentiality obligations. Tax officials have a legal duty of confidentiality as stipulated in Article 50 of the General National Law on Taxes. However, according to the Tax Authority, Articles 1 and 26 of the National Ordinance General Audit Chamber, along with the explanatory memorandum, do not extend the General Audit Chamber's authority to include the auditing of taxpayer information. This is an issue that requires further clarification between the General Audit Chamber and the Tax Office, supported by legal advice, to ensure that all parties fully understand the legal boundaries and obligations. It is crucial to respect the authority of the General Audit Chamber and comply with its legal mandate, while at the same time ensuring that tax confidentiality laws are not violated. To achieve this, the matter will be addressed separately to provide clear guidance on what is legally permissible moving forward. These were the findings and responses related to the ex officio tax assessments for individuals. I will now present the findings as outlined in the General Audit Chamber's report relating to ex officio tax assessments for business taxpayers. 1. Production of unverified automated ex officio assessments. Currently, business ex officio tax assessments are automatically generated without additional verification. Moving forward, we will explore methods to enhance the accuracy and oversight of these calculations. Potential approaches include sampling-based verification to ensure the reliability of the assessments, IT application control testing to evaluate the accuracy of the system's calculation and identify potential errors or inefficiencies. Implementing these measures will help ensure that ex officio tax assessments are both fair and accurate while maintaining the integrity of the tax system. Number 2, inadequate understanding of individual business circumstances. The report noted that assessments do not always reflect business-specific conditions. This is an area that requires further evaluation to determine how best to refine the estimation process. Number 3, outdated ICT systems, the SIA tax system. The current tax system is outdated and poses a significant risk to tax administration. If it were to fail completely, tax operations could be severely disrupted. Efforts are already underway to secure a new tax system which will provide better functionality, accuracy, and efficiency. Passwords not regularly changed. The tax authority acknowledges the findings in the report regarding the absence of a mandatory password change requirement. This matter has since been discussed with the head of IT to ensure compliance with modern cybersecurity protocols. While this is the case, the risk of unauthorized access to sensitive information remains low. Access to the SIA system, which is an application installed on the employees' laptops, requires prior authentication. Tax employees must first log into their laptops using a password that is routinely changed and subject to specific complex requirements. Since the SIA system is only accessible after a secure login to the device, this adds an additional layer of protection. Nevertheless, IT security remains a top priority as we must continuously work to prevent hacking, phishing, and other cyber threats that could compromise key taxpayer data. Ongoing evaluations will be conducted to further strengthen system security and ensure compliance with best practices. Number 5, lack of integration between the tax office, the receiver, the census, and the Chamber of Commerce systems. Interdepartmental data sharing remains a major challenge. Currently, there is limited system integration, making real-time updates difficult. These system integrations are also a key part of the eGov Trust Fund project. While the Receiver's Office has recently received viewing rights within the tax system, the ultimate goal is to establish seamless data integration across all relevant agencies. The following measures will be implemented in response to the report's findings. These measures address all recommendations of the Audit Chamber's report. 1, development of written policies and work instructions. Clear guidelines will be established in collaboration with the head inspector for determining reasonable estimates in ex officio tax assessments. 2, exploring automation of individual tax assessments. We will assess the feasibility of automating individual tax assessments to allow tax assessors to review cases more efficiently, thereby reducing workload and to assess in a more timely manner. Sampling of ex officio tax assessments. While each ex officio tax assessment may not be individually verified by another tax official, an annual sample review will be conducted. The findings from this review will be discussed internally to serve as a learning tool for tax assessors. Taxpayer education and awareness sessions. Sessions will be organized to educate taxpayers about their obligations and provide guidance on correctly filing their taxes. Over the past 2 years, tax-related sessions during Financial Literacy Month have been the most attended. As promised, these sessions will be held more frequently and not limited to Financial Literacy Month, recognizing that knowledge is key. Enhancing public awareness through PR and educational content. The tax office PR's team will work on producing more explanatory videos to inform and assist the public in understanding their tax obligations. Advancing the implementation of a new tax system. Efforts will continue to modernize and implement a new tax system for country St. Martin, ensuring efficiency and effectiveness in the tax administration. I would like to express my gratitude to the General Audit Chamber for this report and to the honorable members of Parliament for the opportunity to discuss it. This report highlights several key takeaways that are important to address. Firstly, ex officio tax assessments are only issued due to non-compliance when individuals and businesses fail to fulfill their responsibility to file taxes in a timely manner. Before an ex officio tax assessment is issued, the tax office provides multiple opportunities for compliance. For individuals, an invitation to file is sent, followed by a reminder. If no filing occurs, an ex officio assessment is issued, which can still be challenged by submitting the required tax return. For businesses, an invitation to file is issued, but no additional reminders are sent before the ex officio assessment is imposed. Businesses also have the opportunity to object by filing. This report rightfully highlights inefficiencies in the ex officio tax assessment process, and as indicated, necessary improvements will be made. However, we must also recognize the risk of not issuing ex officio tax assessments. Not issuing these means less tax filings and ultimately lower government revenue. It is important to remember that individuals and businesses that do not file have already violated their legal obligations, whether it concerns income tax or business. At the core of this discussion is a fundamental truth. A thriving country requires functioning and well-funded government. Our ability to maintain quality health care, education, judicial services, social welfare, and infrastructure depends on all individuals and businesses fulfilling their tax obligations. Last year, ex officio income tax assessments for 2019 were issued, as well as ex officio business tax assessments for 2020. Therefore, there is still an opportunity for taxpayers to file their returns for the subsequent years 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024, which will ensure that they will not receive an ex officio tax assessment over those years. I strongly encourage all individuals and businesses to file their taxes proactively to avoid unnecessary ex officio tax assessments. Thank you for your attention, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Minister Gums. I see that we have the first member of parliament with questions, so I give the floor to MP Westcott Williams.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair Lady, and through you, my thanks to the Minister for her presentation and addressing the concerns in this report of the General Audit Chamber. Madam Chair Lady, the Minister of Finance has once again highlighted the, to use her words, limitations that currently prevent a good tax data collection. The Minister responded to my question regarding this matter. So my question regarding data in the budget meeting, and again highlighted in this meeting the limitations. And thus, my question in this context to the Minister is if there is anything that can be done in order to get this overall generalized tax data in terms of how the response is in what different taxes, because I believe that having that type of generalized information would be helpful as we review and discuss changes to the tax system. For Parliament, that information would be helpful in that discussion. Are some of the taxes based on what we're seeing, based on what we're receiving, are those the taxes that we need to review, change, eliminate, whatever the case may be? So the Minister had responded, Madam Chair Lady, that information, generalized information, tax information, would have to be attained by a third party. So in connection therewith, my question is, can that type of general tax information, the ongoing discussions about how many persons actually are in the tax system, how many persons are paying, so that kind of general information. And thus my question is not necessarily to be answered today, but I would appreciate receiving the answers in writing, if possible. So what can be done, given those limitations, to still be able to extract generalized tax information in moving forward with whatever tax changes or tax system changes are anticipated? Secondly, the Minister has indicated in previous meetings regarding tax and tax amendments and tax changes that there is one or maybe more draft ordinances in process with respect to taxes. And so my question is, given the fact that the website of the Council of Advice is under construction, I believe it still is, and thus it is not possible to see which legislation is at the Council of Advice, has been handled, etc. So my question to the Minister is, through you, Madam Chair Lady, if the status of the draft ordinances with respect to taxes can be given. So, for example, which are at the Council of Advice, if any, which are back at government, if they are in that state, and if we could just get an overview of that. Again, I want to thank the Minister for her responses to this particular report from the General Audit Chamber. And I asked the Minister to consider with the General Audit Chamber this particular response, albeit it's an updated response, but in order to get out of the way that we have these reports and no response is being given. Again, I know there have been subsequent reports, but if the Minister in this particular case with the General Audit Chamber can say, these are my responses, now let's work forward, and we can close that off. And to continue as much as possible to respond where it is asked to reports of the General Audit Chamber. I wouldn't use the word hate, but there's nothing I don't like as much as having the Parliament be told, you have these reports and you have done nothing with it. And I don't like it for the government either. So, and if it's not possible to respond to all of the issues in the report, then let that be stated. But let us use the reports of these high councils of state in a productive way. So if the Minister can, on this report, kind of synchronize with the General Audit Chamber, that we get it out of the way. These are my answers. This is what I'm doing. Next report up. I take the Minister of Finance, Madam Chair Lady, has made some commitments in terms of some of the things to be done. And given that Parliament is going in the direction of holding ministers to their word with respect to things that are going to be done, the so-called commitments by ministers, if there is some type of a timeline that can be given, a realistic timeline, because I know we all would like these changes and amendments to the tax system to be done like yesterday, but we know that's not feasible. So if we can get a kind of timeline, also taking into consideration the improvements/reform that are being conducted under the auspices of the TWO, so the Landspaket. And Madam Chair Lady, I don't know through you if the Minister is aware of the comments from many members of the second chamber who also receives the reports from the TWO, and they are not, to use a Dutch phrase, te spreken in connection with the most recent way of reporting from the TWO. It's nice. I have seen it. I don't know if Parliament got it, but I have definitely seen the latest reports. It's nice in terms of visuality. But, and I want to agree somewhat with those members of the second chamber who believe that it is not giving you the essence of where things stand with these different projects as part of the Landspaket. In fact, some of the members of the second chamber suggested that the TWO and the government of St. Martin go back to the previous way of reporting. But in any case, I think what I would like to see from the reporting is a realistic timeline with respect to the priorities of the government of St. Martin. So the elements of tax reform that are important for the Minister of Finance and the government of St. Martin, let those things be highlighted, be kind of pulled out of the process of the TWO and given priority. So if somehow that can be worked out, I know it's going good and we have all of these themes and reports, but the priorities of government should again be stressed with the organization of the TWO. And then, Madam Chair Lady, I happen to have been in a virtual conference yesterday in which a business executive of Aruba giving his take on economic developments, etc., on Aruba, made a very interesting comment with respect to an item that on St. Martin too has generated a lot of discussion with respect to taxes and tax system, and that is the tax on tips. The tax on tips. And the comment made that caught my attention in this regard was that while, because it applies for St. Martin too, many persons are on the minimum wage level, not taxing tips, give these persons a little extra financial impulse and, and contribute to basically elevating that social issue in terms of the minimum wage vis-a-vis the cost of living on St. Martin. So I want to specifically, again, bring this matter of taxing tips on St. Martin to the attention of the Minister of Finance. And if after reviewing, researching, whatever the case may be, I can get the minister's take on this matter, while my suggestion is that it be looked at like it is on Aruba and not be taxed, and that the changes in order to make that possible, that those be considered. Madam Chair, Lady, those are my 5 points, and I'm being very specific in terms of what I'm asking, and not so much what I'm saying, but what I'm asking of the minister, because as I said, it contributes to the efficiency of Parliament if after having these discussions and deliberations, the ministers can be clear on what they're telling Parliament they will do, so that we can keep the finger on the pulse where those matters are concerned. Madam Chair, Lady, I want to thank you once again.
Thank you very much, MP Westcott Williams. I also wanted to just also make a point of something that you said. When we start these meetings, we have these guidelines and we make reference to the documents that we are going to be discussing here today. And I should have added it on in the beginning, but for those persons in publicly viewing this, and even for my colleagues, just as a reminder, all of the reports of the General Audit Chamber are available online. They are public. And MP Westcott also made a note about a response, a warranted response, because this report that we have, for those that would like to go online and look it up, when you go to the General Audit Chamber website, you just search audit into the process of ex officio tax assessments. And the comment that MP Westcott made was about page 10, which is talking about the fact that always in these General Audit Chamber reports, they always say whether or not they received a response. Now, this report is from April 2023 that we're finally discussing. So I really actually appreciate the fact that we are having this meeting here today at all. But I also made note of the fact that the Minister of Finance talks about, certain confidentiality, that certain things can't be shared in the sense of testing, of coming into test samples, of tax information. But the response will go a long way in making sure that we actually all seamlessly work together and use the advice that we get from one entity, one council, to help us sort of improve or maybe say, no, this is not really the case, but the communication clarifies any confusion that we have and any issues that we have in this. So I really want to say I appreciate the fact that MP Westcott brought it up, because I actually had it as a question to the minister of whether or not since April 2023, we have had a change in administration, but whether or not a response was provided to them, because then we have to deal with the same thing all the time. As MP Westcott Williams said, when we come to discuss these, whether it's 2 months or a year or 2 years later, we have it said to us, no one responded, and it's not through any intentional lack of response. It's just sometimes things change and people get busy, but this is a very, very valid point that MP Westcott brought up, so thank you for that. And I would just ask your indulgence if we can take a 5-minute break, please. Thank you so much. So we adjourn for 5 minutes. Welcome back to this Committee of Country Expenditures. I proceed to give the floor to Member of Parliament Veronica Johnson-Webster. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you. Good afternoon to the Minister of Finance and her support staff, and to my colleagues on the Tribune. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, I've read the report from the Audit Chamber, and I remember when the Audit Chamber started with this project, they started with a survey, and I definitely participated in the survey because the topics in there are topics that I was hearing a lot of feedback from the community about, and that's with the ex officio tax assessments. And some things that the minister mentioned, I had some question on, because through you, Madam Chair, the minister mentioned that only when businesses or individuals have not filed, they receive the ex officio. But what I have noticed in practice, and I've seen with family members, I've seen with just members of the public, is that sometimes taxes are declared monthly, and then you still get an ex officio, and the burden of proof, as was mentioned, is on the business, is on you. So then you've paid, and then you have to now find this slip, and if your administration is not good, and I get the feeling sometimes that businesses who maybe they might think do not have a good administration, or do not have an external accountant, that those get targeted, and then you get these ex officio, and you have to now go and bring all of your documentation to prove again and to show again, look, I did pay, and here's my receipt. So I don't think it's only those who have not filed. I think that something happens inside as well, that receipts are misplaced, or whatever. The question that I have, and yeah, it's something that lives in the community, so I will ask it. We would like to know if the people who are doing the assessments and the collections, if they are somehow getting remunerated for the amount, like a percentage or something on how much they bring in. Because people wonder that, because the other thing that was mentioned by the minister was that the assessment is an estimate based on what was declared before, but I have also seen some friends, some family members, some people in the community who get assessments of, what is it, 250,000 for a profit tax, whereas the company has been submitting between $0 and $500 per month for their turnover tax. So how does that relate then to an ex officio of 250,000 for profit tax? Because if you count up just how much the turnover was, it could never be that amount, and 25% still is not coming up to that amount. And the audit chamber rightfully stated in the beginning, in the summary, where because of the amounts sometimes that are assessed, that you cause stress, the tax office then causes a lot of stress and guilt, and I can't find where it's stated, but it's in the summary where it specifically mentioned guilt as well. For the taxpayers, it's a bad feeling that it get, and then it's a bad feeling that people get about paying taxes, whereas we would want to encourage people to pay taxes, and that's why I applaud that the minister mentioned that more will be done about teaching people about what their obligations are with taxes, etc. But the way how it comes over now, and the stress, It's a lot on the people. I would also like to ask, as it was mentioned, that the 2019 for persons and the 2020 for businesses, the ex officio was just sent out last year. I wanted to know what is the reason for the backlog. I don't know if the minister mentioned that already, but it seems like it's really far back. So if you're receiving, we're in 2025 now, so if you receive those now, it could be difficult sometimes for business to go back, and I think that there's a 5-year limit also. So why so far back, and do we anticipate that we will catch up and maybe only be 2 years or 1 year behind in the future? And also, since we've submitted now since the ministry has submitted the 2019 and the 2020, and we have this report here from the audit chamber with the recommendations. Is the ministry going to look at those recommendations and start monitoring, at least for 2019 individuals and 2020 businesses, what the results are of the ex officio? So how many of those are paid, how many were rectified, and important for me to see would be later down, when it is possible to monitor this, those that were rectified, from the amount that was in the assessment, how much was the real amount in the end when it was rectified? And so how big that change is, which has to do with what I mentioned before. Then with the ex officio, once people receive those assessments, a lot of time people think about what happens to all of those other people who don't form part of the tax base. So because you're known, because you're honest and honest business and submit your taxes, you end up being on the list. So you end up getting these assessments. But then you see other businesses operating who do not get assessments because they have never filed. So I was wondering, it comes up all the time, about the link with the Chamber of Commerce and the link with Economic Affairs. Is that possible? If not, why not? I know other countries where it is done, and less popular will be if the tax department monitors the social media and other media, because we see a lot of businesses advertising that I'm sure are not known in the tax department. It's less popular, but it is the gray economy, and I think everyone should contribute. And if taxpayers receive assessments after filing tax returns, especially when it is due to insufficient withholding by employers, through you, Madam Chair, is there a mechanism to shift the penalties to the employers instead of the employees? And I've seen that with some elderly in the community, or some people who are now just on pension, and then they get those late assessments, and then they find out that their former employer didn't submit enough, and then the penalties end up with them, and then they cannot, they are facing difficulties. So can something be done about that, or something be done about making the employers withhold more accurate amounts so that the employees do not suffer? And something else that came up too, a question that was asked to me was, especially now with paying for our licenses and the QR codes for the license plates, if we have tax returns, first question is, why does it take so long for individuals to get their tax returns back? And is there a possibility for you to then take the money, you know that you're supposed to get a tax return, a certain amount, and you also have to pay government? Can you not let the money for your license plates come out of your tax returns? And if not, why not? Because I'm looking at businesses. If businesses owe taxes and then they work for government, then it is withheld. So why can we not have that? If government owes and then you owe government, can you not withhold it? I guess it's something with the system, but can that be put in place as well? Those are my questions for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MP Johnson-Webster, for the questions. I now give the floor to MP La Cruz. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairlady, and a good afternoon once again to all. Madam Chairlady, I'd like to make 2 or 3 comments. And on page 6 of the report from the General Audit Chamber, we see that it says, when setting a reference amount, a surcharge is added. As a rule, this markup amounts to 10 for individuals and 25% for companies, and this is intended to act as a form of pressure for the taxpayers to subsequently file their tax return. Madam Chairlady, through you to the Minister of Finance, this works exactly in the opposite from what they are trying to achieve. If you have a audit and I get an assessment that shows a lot more, like my fellow colleague mentioned, this brings shame, makes me uncomfortable, and then I go into hiding. And that is not exactly what we want. And this is very deceitful because you're going to add something to it just to, like we say in Dutch, lock me out. But that is where trust is also lost in the tax department because they should know better. Then, Madam Chairlady, through you to the Minister, are there any plans to make any changes to the National Ordinance, especially AB 213, GT number 674, when it comes to profit tax for locals? Is that a possibility? Are we going to do something? We have a lot of young people starting up businesses that are also asking questions. Hey, are there any tax exemptions for us young locals starting our own businesses? Then, Madam Chairlady, I have an idea that I'd like to bring across to the Minister of Finance. One of the biggest problems with business owners is that they don't know everything. And being compliant with everything that has to do with government, so we're speaking about SFV, taxes, labor department, health department, everything that has to do that makes your business get that check mark. Is it a possibility, an idea, that, for example, when a business license is requested, that the owners have to do a 1 week, 3 days, couple hours training, explaining, hey, this is how you file your taxes. A fee could be charged for that. And even if the business owner would have a company doing it for him, at the end, he is still the one responsible. So if he has an idea, okay, even if it's on a memory stick, that you put that information where they could, on a yearly basis, if there are any changes to these forms, put into the computer, go on the website and download the new forms. This is how government would help business owners being compliant with what is exactly expected of them. The problem is, through you, Madam Chairlady, is that as a business person here on St. Martin has to go to 100 offices, get information from every office, and sometimes contradicting each other to be able to remain compliant. And this is the problem that we have here. And once it starts and you have a backlog 1 year, automatically the second year it will be worse. And it takes up manpower and time running behind these types of businesses. And I know that that's not the goal. So again, that was one of my ideas, revenue generating ideas for the minister, that she could actually put that together and have businesses follow a small course on how to remain compliant. Then, Madam Chair Lady, through you, the whole idea, I hope when an assessment is made, and the minister said it is based on what you indicated when you first requested your crib number of how much you're going to actually be making, right? That a 25% on top of that is added. I don't think that's totally correct, because I've seen a business that is going to generate 50,000 but failed to file, and the assessment was of 300,000-400,000. So I think that needs to be revised, and especially when you're looking at a year that there was a calamity, for example, COVID or a hurricane, that those numbers are also checked. Then I heard my colleague mention something concerning a statute of limitation on taxes. I'd like to know if that is actually a fact, if that is true or not. Is there such thing? And in the report, one more thing, Madam Chair Lady, again in point 6, it speaks of tax inspectors currently employed. And I don't know if maybe my mind was somewhere else, but I didn't hear the ideas to actually get these FTEs filled. I didn't, if the minister could elaborate a little on that, because otherwise we're going to get nowhere with this. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I see that MP Arian has the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Kafir, colleagues, the Honorable Minister of Finance and her support staff. Madam Chair, I questioned this already once during the budget debate, and I could also imagine that the staff themselves are a bit confused. I'm also a bit confused. I enjoyed the presentation today by the minister, but the presentation today is in direct contradiction to the position of the minister and her words in the past. So I've referenced a video that was since then taken down from the DP page. It's been wiped clean, but it was thankfully downloaded already. And I mentioned this video during the budget debate. This video was posted during the elections, and I also had the video transcribed. In the video, the minister was asked a question regarding the filling out of tax returns. And the minister did indicate it is a law, but the minister said you don't have to file your taxes necessarily if you have no additional income, because your boss or job has filed their yearly wage card. You don't have to do so. That was the exact words of the minister. Again, the minister continued, in theory is a no, but at the same time, you have to potentially file sometimes because other institutions ask for your last file. So I'll continue just for a little more clarity. What we can do, the minister says, then is called the interviewer also asked a question regarding, so are you saying that you don't have to file your taxes? And the minister says you don't, but then you'll be assessed. And the minister then says that the thing is you're being assessed and don't know what you're being assessed on or what you filed. even MP Bonkamp even called in on the show, or message, and during the process, he mentioned that how long must we wait on our yearly assessments to be handled, et cetera, et cetera. The minister mentioned, I find that it's taking too long. I find it's taking too long, and that she is going to get it done faster. And a question came up again, similar to the question posed by MP Veronica Janse regarding the tax returns. And the minister mentioned that they say that there's an issue between the receiver's office and the tax office and no proper communication, but that's something that she'll be working on. That was last year, August. And that she has a problem with the fact that you have to ask for your money. She indicated in the interview that she wants to educate the people of St. Martin that you don't just get your tax returns, you have to ask for your tax returns, and that she doesn't agree with this, and that she feels that once you're owed your money, which I can understand, you should just be able to get your money back. So what I would like to know is, again, a clear position of the government, because I don't believe we can have a position of the minister, and then today, when the staff is here, for example, and it'll be out of election time, that we have a position of the government. What is the position of the government on filing your taxes? I also ask this question because I have had so many questions since the interviews. It was an interview, it was Khalil on the radio, it was MP Varen was on the radio, it was the minister was on the radio, and it was doubled down on a subsequent radio show again. Both those interviews we still have. People are confused. So I would really like to have a final answer. Do you need to file your taxes or not? As I stated before, legal precedent already has been set that once a minister says something, even on Facebook, it is just as good as publishing in the National Gazette. So it cannot have a conflicting message coming out from the minister, and then the ministry has a different position. Regarding the presentation of the minister and looking at the document from the audit chamber, the minister mentioned a policy. What I would like to know is, when will the policy be written for the assessment to be finalized and implementation? So what kind of timeline can we look at? What specific measures will be introduced to ensure tax assessments are standardized and not left to the discretionary judgment according to the minister? MP Westcott Williams was asking a question related to data and information, but I believe, through Madam Chair, the MP more than likely is aware that the government did not appeal the case related to the tax system. And to date, we have not gotten any realistic update on the way forward. All these requests for information and data, I think, has been said over and over and over and over by any Minister of Finance sitting in that position. With the system that we have now, it's very difficult to access data. The pressure is going to take to be able to get the data that the MP wants would mean we have to have a lot more staff, right, combing through documents to be able to access data. Without a new and proper tax system, these questions the MP is posting will be asked every year over and over and over again. Nothing has changed last year, the year before, and the year before that. The only thing that has changed is that now we are now a year or two or three removed from a new tax system. That's the only thing. What is the expected timeline for the implementation of the new tax system? A clear answer. I asked this question during the budget debate. We didn't get a clear answer there. And is it still supported fully by the TREO? Is the funds still allocated for the tax system? Is there any issue with the TREO in the continuation of the tax system? Do we have to start all over from scratch? Because during my term, I believe this was one of the most thorough tenders I've seen, to a point where we didn't just include, first of all, I was totally removed as minister, so I had no awareness of who won or who was part of the bid, totally removed. A system where we didn't just include SGs and department heads, but we also allowed a second tier of staff to participate in the tax system, to also judge on the system. So not just to have the opinion of the top management, but to also get input from the staff that has to use the system on a daily basis. So their input also weighs into the system. Again, during my tenure, I've not seen that done with any other ministry. This was a process of almost a year and a half to get to that point. We've not lost any court case up until that point. And the entity that went to court also was just buying time. So what I would like to know, a clear answer. What is the way forward? Are we going to start this process over? If so, when? When would the tender be published? Because if we took 2 years, that means that we are at the very least 2 years removed from a new tax system. So all the questions from MP West Scott Williams could be pushed forward to 2027 to get any relevant answers. Regarding are there any ongoing discussions on integrating the system now with the Census Office, the Chamber of Commerce, and the receivers? And if so, what is the timeline? Given that there's only one tax inspector, what short-term measures are being considered to address this critical shortage? Because if you look at the budget 2025, which obviously hasn't been ratified, we don't see any budget there to hire. And an issue that will come up for sure, and it was being addressed within the Ministry of Finance when I was there, was the updating of the salary scales of the whole Ministry of Finance. We have the Ministry of Justice, which now puts the rest of government out of whack. So now you have one entity that's being fixed, but now everybody else is out of whack. There's almost no way we're able to attract the persons that we need to work in the Ministry of Finance, especially in tax office, without updating the salary scales. So what steps are currently being taken to update the salary scales to attract qualified tax professionals? And I'm hoping the answer is not that we're waiting on P&O or the Ministry of General Affairs, because we don't have to. The same way we did justice, we were already in the process already with SOAB, among others, to update our own already. We're not going to be able to get what we need without getting the qualified professionals, but being able to actually attract them and pay the current ones that they are already. We have, and that's an assets question also. What is the update on the BRA Act and, among others, the whole BRA legislation? And why that's related to this? Because we have persons in tax office that, for example, were stuck on a scale for almost 10 years with no kind of growth because of this legislation that they can't grow. And surprisingly, and I told them too, you guys are better than me, because I would not be able to work in a position, come to work every single day, knowing that inflation is increasing every year, and knowing that my salary has not changed for 10 years. The legislation that we brought already since almost a year ago now, and the government cannot present it. We're not going to keep staff without being able to allow them to grow. So where is this legislation? Because that would definitely help with the current persons working there now, who deserve it. Is there any truth to the ministry considering outsourcing temporary hires to address the backlog in tax assessments to any entity? What specific steps will be taken to ensure the taxpayers are properly informed about their rights and obligations before receiving an ex officio assessment? In addition to that, again, if the position of the minister or the government is not having to file, I've asked this in 2 subsequent prior budget debates, the communication, the marketing. Explain people that hey, you don't have to file if this is the case. But there's no communication from the government on these procedures. How will the ministry continue, how will we look going forward at the surcharge policy that MP La Cruz mentioned, the 10% for individuals and 25% for businesses? And if we look at this, is it actually, let's say, improving compliance? What alternative methods in the past will be looked at in terms of ensuring that taxpayers receive their assessments reliably, given the issues with mail delivery? I know we started the process of the legislation that we have now. It looks only at physical delivery and not digital delivery. That's a very small change in the legislation, I believe. It was discussed a few times already. What is the process, or where are we in that timeline of getting that done? That's something that could drastically change the communication within government and being able to get the answers that we need. Madam Chair, that'll be all for me, and I look forward to the answers by the Minister.
Thank you, MP Irian, for your questions and comments. I now give the floor to MP Dimar Labega. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, colleagues, the Minister of Justice, and Finance. Thank you, MP Durant, for your presentation. Just to piggyback off of what MP La Cruz stated about education and working together, I think it would be a great idea, maybe it's already in place, to collaborate with entities such as the Chamber, when you're the notary as well, when you're opening a business or you're renewing your license, that just as how you're giving a document describing what document you need, you're also giving, hey, what document you need for tax compliancy, as well as, some educational information on how to file your taxes. You could even do a barcode where you could scan, and then it'll take you to a page and keep people reminded about taxes, because, of course, you have a lot of people, whether young, older, opening businesses, but they're not getting that tax information. So once you keep that in their mind visually or through a pamphlet, I think it will help with the compliance and education as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Member of Parliament Labega. I now give the floor to MP Duran. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to you, my honorable colleagues, the Minister, support staff, and everyone that is tuned in. Madam Chair, I had about 3 points, of 2 of which was brought up by my colleague, MP Irian, so I'll just put the last one forward to get some clarity. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, different staff members within your ministry, I would say 3 to be exact, have brought some concerns forward in the sense of you making certain statements publicly regarding the need to comply with certain regulations that have been complied for years. So it's bringing sort of confusion. And also when I meet with certain individuals, even last week I had someone that was complaining about the assessment. They've been living here for over 26 years. They showed where they've been filing. At least they had the last 8 or 9 years. And there were some discrepancies. And they were told by someone else that, yes, the minister said we don't have to do this and we don't have to do that, in the sense of not having to file in certain instances. This in itself is creating a lot of confusion. So I really would like to get some clarity on that point, especially with the point that was brought forward as well with the 5 years. After 5 years, it's expired. How is that being done? Because I know for a fact, and I always say this to individuals, sitting as a minister, I have to look out for the country's best interests. Now, to sit as a minister, you have to also look out for persons within the community because we all represent them. I know that it's a very thin line, but I do believe that clarity is needed in order to avoid confusion because, as I say, mixed signals are being sent out from the ministry and, in this case, the minister. And I think that once that is clear, that people would have a clear understanding as to what is required from them so that there's no confusion for you and also for the staff that has to enforce the laws of the land. So I would like some clarity on that point. I hope that I was clear. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Parliament Duran. I now give the floor to MP Christopher Waver. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Minister, support staff, my colleague MPs, those listening, and various media. Just briefly, very briefly, the amount of FTEs currently, and also what are we looking at when we do revamp the whole tax administrative system? And based on that as well, is there currently, because I heard the minister mention about lack of data or getting data, is there also somebody that's assigned, like a data analyst, that will be looking at this data, or is that something that will be added within the new FTEs that we're looking in when we revamp the system? Because I think having that kind of information is very key moving forward as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Parliament Wavered. I give the floor to MP Westcott Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. And just briefly, I hear several questions being asked and asking the minister, to give a clarification, which is good and well and important. And in that context, I want to ask the minister if any of these areas that have been highlighted needing to inform the taxpayers can be done by means of an aanschrijving. Madam Chair Lady, you would recall that I have been in Parliament with successive ministers of finance discussing the matter of the change that needs to be made in the profit tax ordinance with respect to foundations and associations. There is correspondence to this effect by several ministers of finance acknowledging that that change needs to come. When I repeated that question, I believe it was during the budget debate, the Minister of Finance, Gums, provided an aanschrijving that anticipates on this change that needs to take place in the profit tax with respect to associations and foundations. So, first of all, I'm grateful to have received that. What is the benefit of something like an aanschrijving? That means that different entities and departments can take into account that this change of law, most likely, of course it has to pass Parliament, but will take place. So in that context, I asked the minister if any of the issues that she is anticipating addressing by means of law, changes to law, etc., if that instrument of a aanschrijving cannot be used. If it can, in which areas that have been highlighted is the minister intending to use aanschrijving to inform the public and the administration of these changes that are anticipated to come. So if I can also get that added to some of the information that I have asked about from the minister. And as I said, as far as I'm concerned, this information can be, at least my questions can be answered in writing, because then we would have them, at hand here in Parliament to look back into, etc. So thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the viewers, and good afternoon to the Minister and her support staff and honourable members of Parliament. Minister, after sitting and hearing, to you, Madam Chair, after sitting and listening to the Minister's presentation and the contributions of my colleagues, I think it's very important to, we've been speaking about the pending or deliberating about the pending tax what's the word? Tax reform, thank you. The pending tax reform. And the members of the public, at least the ones that I speak to, have gotten a different, they've understood it differently, at least the ones that I speak to, because they see the pending tax reform as something imminent. And, you know, they have a lot of burning questions. Some of the questions have already been answered on here in the floor of Parliament. But I think it's important to manage expectations and for the minister to give not a timeline, but a realistic goal that the minister is working towards, to say, hey, the tax reform is something that we are striving to achieve by the year 2027, 2028. And I hope to have more pertaining to necessary tendering or whatever by the end of 2026 or 2025, more of a timeline, because even in the contributions just now from my colleague MP Irian, a lot of people didn't know that the tax reform was a process that was already started, taken to court. The government did an appeal, so everything has to start all over again. So with that being the case, what is the realistic expectation of basically starting from ground zero? And what can the people expect of the new reform? The minister went in depth about it during the budget debate, but I think it's very much important to keep repeating what the minister is working on and how she's planning on doing it, even though I know that can be tiresome, but it's to get the message out and to prevent further confusion. So I would like to thank the minister for her presentation. And something that I've been speaking on and mentioning from day one of sitting in this seat, I think it's very important to always be aware of the message that is being sent out, whether via the floor of Parliament or private social medias or interviews or whatever, because I always say that once something is on the internet, you can't take it back. And Madam Chair, I think in the last couple of months, we've had many instances whether something was said during whichever period under whatever environment, and then either contradicted or taken back or corrected here on the floor of Parliament, and all of these things could be avoided. So I would like to again stress to the minister that, especially in the seat that the minister holds, everything that comes out of her mouth will be taken basically as Bible, and people, especially if it's in the benefit of them, won't forget. So to be extra vigilant with things like that, and especially articles that can be written on the words used by the minister, and in this case, the confusion that it has caused in the public. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Member of Parliament York. I see that there are no other members of Parliament with questions or comments, so I will actually add some of my own. And one of them, well, let's just go in order. The first one is that I actually take note of the difference between the individual assessments and that are manually assessed. So the personal tax assessments are manually done, whereas the businesses are automatically generated. And I would like to remind or even say for the first time that when we had the presentation by the General Audit Chamber last year, towards the end of last year, we were given an example of an assessment that was completed to have as an example for us to walk through it and talk through it. And one of them was an assessment for a foundation, just as MP Westcott previously alluded to, that when you are having this automatically generated assessment, where does your stichting or foundation or not-for-profits fall? And I wanted to really mention that because of the fact that the ones that we were saying that we had, there was errors on the year assessment on it, but then there was also an assessment of 200,000. So it's just to clarify that also for public consumption and understanding, that nonprofits, stichtings understand, even though we are required by law, which is something that some people are, some of the members of Parliament have referred to today, even though we are required to do our tax assessments, what is the message we are giving to the public? Whether you are a NV, a BV, a stichting, a not-for-profit entity, and an individual, that we all understand that we have an obligation to file our taxes, And these are the scenarios where maybe perhaps an assessment, an automatically generated assessment may pop up, but then how do you react at the end of the day to that? And what I would recommend, perhaps just as a recommendation to the Ministry of Finance, is to ensure that infomercials and go out, not just words, but sometimes you realize that videos have a lot of impact. Short videos have a lot of impact, and the confusion that is still out there about tax is one that I think that we have a role to play as government or our ministers to ensure that it's as easy to comprehend as possible. The next one was going back. I'm just going to go back to reiterate the response, whether a response was sent to the audit chamber. And the reason I'm going back to it is even though I referenced the last page of the report that talks about the response and no response being made, when you review the contents of this, it's a very, very short report. Most of their reports are under 15 pages. But certain comments that are said inside, if it's read by public, that by the public alone, whether it's read by us or whether it's read by persons in our community, because the documents are public, it gives the Ministry of Finance the opportunity to either correct or support those comments. Because this report was done with an interview of persons within the tax administration. So it's not something that is done by, let's say, the General Audit Chamber using their own volunteered tax assessments as a sample for us here to review in a closed door standing. So of course the confidentiality is protected of the entity, and they did give us some examples and it was redacted with the name, but you saw that it was foundation or stichting. And I just want to make sure that the contents of this is properly sort of justified or clarified. I don't want to say they're right and you're wrong, or you're right and they're wrong, but I'm just going to go back to the fact that this report is here to help us hold the Council of Ministers accountable, whether it is about finance or any other ministry, and it will also help you all to improve your way of working if that is necessary. One of the questions I had about a tax assessment, well, based on the presentation and in general about the ex officio tax assessments, is what is the time frame of it? Because what we can conclude from this report and your presentation, Minister, is that you will get a ex officio tax assessment if you don't do your taxes in time. But we know that our taxes are due April. And how long after that do you get this? Because the example that is given in the report is, I'm sorry, I write my notes all over the place. The example that was given in the report is that when the interview was done of the tax administration to prepare this report by the General Audit Chamber, a note was mentioned that a project was underway to clean up tax files related to businesses, and this will run until July 2023. Remember, this was done, interviews were done during the year 2022. The report was issued April 2023. So obviously a follow-up can be done either through the through the finance ministry, or with us following up as well with the General Audit Chamber. But what is the update on this? Was it done? Was it cleaned up? Because the businesses that were assessed in 2019 and whether or not they still exist and in operation is what they were referring to in this cleanup. So I go back to the question of what is the timeline. So if I don't do my tax return to you, if I don't do my taxes, I don't file my taxes by April of 2025, does it mean that a year later I'm going to get the ex officio, or does it mean that it comes 4 years later? Because the example we're giving in here is 2019 businesses, and then we're doing the cleanup in 2022 and up until 2023. So I just want to get a timeline of it, because then, again, it's something that in your, if you all decide to do a infomercial to educate the public will understand that a year later, you're going to get an ex officio, and this is why you didn't do your taxes in the proper time for it. Also, I have a question about the assessments that are done automatically, which is specifically for the businesses. When we are preparing the budget, if I remember, the figures that come in the financials are done on a cash basis. If I am correct, please correct me if I am wrong. Which means that if it's done on cash basis, so the money that government makes or collects from taxes is done on a cash basis, which means literally every single penny we actually physically get into our bank account or in our hand is what is going to add up into your amount that we're going to reflect in our books, in our financials. But when we're doing assessments, how are those assessments used internally, and how are they adjusted for the budget purposes? So, because I understand cash basis, but if we're doing budget, how is it used internally for your own understanding of, well, we have an assessment. If we have our 100 businesses that are assessed at the maximum, or the 200,000, like we said, and not just for foundations, I mean for properly operating and inexistent businesses, how does that work internally for you to understand really what your potential earnings are versus the cash basis earnings? Because I would expect that the estimation is going to be very, very far away from the actual cash that we collect. So it's about, having a clear picture as well for not only internal purposes, but then when it comes to the floor of Parliament, that we understand the numbers we're dealing with and the source of it, just the representation that we're comparing all the time, apples and oranges, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, as much as possible. Also, again, a recurring question we had today from several members of Parliament was the plans between the receivers and the tax office working together. Sometimes when we get this tax assessment, and if it's a very high figure, the way that we object to it, as mentioned by some MPs, is that we will have our accountant sending an objection to an assessment, and then the process goes where we have to prove that this was done or what the actual income was for the business or the individual to correct the amounts. And my question is, what are the plans for receivers and tax office to work together so that we are streamlining this process? Because when the objections come in, the objections go to both entities. They go to the tax and they go to the receiver's office. And it's a lot of duplication of effort, I understand, but then it will also help not only the individual doing their objection, but also the internal workings of the tax department, the inspectorate, as well as in the receiver's office. So what are the plans going forward for that? I'm just going to ask this so that for public consumption, again, it is clarified. It is also an additional one that I think constantly we will have to remind the public how we work and why things are the way they are and why certain entities collect on behalf of government and that sort of thing. But AOV tax assessments are still sent on the tax letterhead and not SZV, but SZV collects it. Not everyone understands that, but if we continuously remind people of the fact that it comes on a tax letterhead, SZV is tasked with being able to collect that for you. They're the one receiving it, but they're also the one doing the payout, if I'm not mistaken. And it causes a lot of confusion. So it's just for us to reiterate that process, why that process exists, and just to clear up any confusion. And I think that is it for me. I will make a reference to another MP that noted the difference of the 10% for personal tax assessment versus business of 25%. And somewhere within this report, I'm sorry, I do not have the exact page. I remember reading that, well, for businesses, there's an issue with businesses being more difficult to collect from. And not understanding why businesses are the ones that are more difficult to collect from. I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me. That's why I said this is really handy report. But is it okay that we do that? Is the Ministry of Finance supported by having the differentiation between personal versus business? I understand if this report exists that, well, it might be harder for you to collect from businesses for whatever reason. Is there more work involved in improving the existence of the business? So it's just to make it a fair playing field for between the two. I am not criticizing it. I'm actually absolutely neutral to understand why the differentiation exists. That is all for me in terms of my questions or comments, and I see that an MP would like the floor again. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I got a question from a couple of civil servants during this process that they are listening to. And I also agree with yourself and MP Sarah Scott Williams regarding the fact that we get all these reports from these different institutes, in particular the audit chamber. So, and we need to do more with them, right? In one particular, one was the audit, the mini audit on the government's Christmas voucher program from civil servants, which was basically an audit when I was there. And I'll be requesting that through you, Madam Chair, through this committee, that we bring these mini audits, this and the one on the housing compliance, again, another audit during my term, in a meeting so we could discuss it and look at the things that went wrong, the things that could have gone better, and the recommendations that he brought forward. That also just brings accountability to government. And I definitely have no problem showing that what we did, what could have been done better, and hopefully the government now can do even better than we did. But regarding the Christmas voucher mini audit, it just brought more questions for me, and I understand where the civil servants are coming from regarding filing. I asked very specific questions during the budget debate to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister then referred back to the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Finance then referred back to the Prime Minister, and at some point in time, we can't ask any more questions, so then we don't get any more answers. But seeing that the civil servants now are asking this question again, I'll repeat it again. The government gave a stipend, a bonus, a gratification. They gave something to the civil servants for Christmas. It was not a food voucher. It was money that went on their accounts. I asked the government, and now I'm asking the minister, what legal basis was used to execute this task? Was there an LB, an MB, or just a letter instructing the department to execute, or departments to execute? What was the legal basis for this? I also asked, and the civil servants are now asking me again, we didn't ask to get this money on our account because they voted differently. Now the money is on their account and they're asking, how do I file this money because the government gave us money tax-free? The government gave every civil servant this money tax-free. So now they're asking, how do they file it? Why didn't the government, based on the presentation today and the questions posed today, why didn't the government take out the necessary taxes like they usually do for any gratification or any money that goes on their account automatically? So what is the process for these civil servants? How are they supposed to file? What amount should be taken out? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. I see that MP York would like the floor. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before the minister leaving, I would like to formally ask the minister if she's willing, through you, Madam Chair, to submit her plans, tentative plans, I would say, for the tax reform in writing, either to Parliament or to my person or to my faction. Reason being, I was very adamant in the recent debates about tax incentives for startups and small businesses, especially seeing that our current tax code doesn't necessarily recognize the phrase small business. So they're easily forgotten. So in order for me to see, and I had a couple ideas, I also pitched during, or some that were pitched during the budget debate, and some that, I would have preferred to personally sit and speak to the minister about. But seeing that since the budget debate, I've reached out multiple times to the minister and have yet to receive a response, I guess I'll just have to officially just ask for the plans in writing to understand more, get a better gist of what the minister wants to do, so I can see where my ideas or suggestions, how they fall and if they're realistic or not, to be able to submit it via an official route, seeing that I cannot get an audience with the minister. So those would be my questions, and I would like to thank the Chair Lady for her indulgence. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York, and thank you to all the members of Parliament for your questions and comments. I'd like to take a 5-minute break just to deliberate with the Minister of Finance regarding the answers to all of the questions asked here today. Thank you very much. Welcome back to this Committee of Country Expenditures meeting. And after discussing with the minister, we have decided to adjourn the meeting in order to give the minister sufficient time to answer the questions. And I would like to note that the discussion on this basically shows that members of parliament really went deep into the report that was prepared by the General Audit Chamber. So I really do want to thank the General Audit Chamber for giving this to us. Members of parliament outside of this committee also participating the way they did, considering everyone had something to say and question about it, showing the need for this discussion to continue and to allow the minister sufficient time to come back with her answers after prepared. So, and also a thank you to the minister and her team for being here. And this meeting is adjourned until further notice. Oh, sorry, before I do, I didn't hit the gavel yet. MP Westcott Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. And just briefly to ask through you if the minister will share the report that or her presentation with Parliament, just to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I saw through a nod of head that the minister is indeed going to share this report. I also, this presentation, I also wanted to, I'm glad for the extra time because I wanted to let the minister know as well, and the Ministry of Finance know that, and all of the ministers that, that the plan is to use the reports from the General Audit Chamber more and more. That is, like I said earlier on in the meeting, this is what gives us even more reason to have a discussion, a very open discussion, when needed, closed door discussion when needed about these sort of topics. So it gives us a heads up of how things will pan out. So just as a reminder again then to everyone to pay attention to these reports, there is a channel, a WhatsApp channel that everyone can subscribe to for the Audit Chamber. And it's a nice reminder when you do get busy here or on the other side that you get a reminder of when the reports are released rather than waiting until we call meetings here or having a request from a member of parliament for these meetings. So thank you once again, Minister, for you and your team for being here. And we look forward to the answers at a later date. Meeting adjourned.